Je pense sans cesse à toi.
Hello and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. Episode 42 will be very sweet. We'll start out by exploring the bold new world of modern pastry. Next, Mac life. What explains the macaron craze? And finally, we'll discuss pastry trends that are over and what's coming up next. I sense we may have a debate about donuts, but I'm not sure yet. In the studios of OPB today, I'm joined by Cheryl Wakerhauser, author of Modern French Pastry, Innovative Techniques, Tools, and Design. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you for having me.
And Kyra Bussanich, four-time winner of Cupcake Wars on the Food Network and author of Sweet Cravings, 50 Seductive Desserts for a Gluten-Free Lifestyle. Hey, Kyra.
Hey.
And Danielle Centoni, a James Beard Award-winning food writer, editor, and recipe developer, whose most recent book is Portland Cooks, Recipes from the City's Best Restaurants and Bars. Hey, Danielle.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Now let's bite into our delicious first course. What is modern French pastry? In an old-fashioned French patisserie, you can find tarte tatin, éclair, croissant, I'm probably pronouncing that all wrong, and madeleine. But Cheryl Wakerhauser, you're at the vanguard of a new wave of really groundbreaking French pastry. So maybe you can start us off by explaining to us what differentiates classic French pastry from modern pastry.
Well, first I want to address what actually is pastry, because I think here in the United States we kind of think of pastry as things you eat for breakfast. Everyone always asks me, like, oh, you must get up really early. I'm like, no, we don't even open the restaurant until 4 o'clock. Anyways, so when we talk about pastry in France, you have three different categories. You have boulangerie, which is basically bread. You have viennoiserie, which is then your croissants and pain au chocolat and brioche.
Can you say that word again, the second one?
Viennoiserie.
How do you spell that?
I don't know.
Viennoiserie.
She's right, I think.
That sounds right.
And it basically is I'm just jumping in, Cheryl.
Yeah.
It's basically laminated dough. So anytime you see the layers of dough with the butter in between, that's viennoiserie, which I can't pronounce correctly either.
Yeah,
but you can spell.
That's like what the French would eat for breakfast. And then you have patisserie, and this is what the French would eat for dessert or something after the third course of the meal. So it's not cookies and brownies and stuff like that. These are what the French would call entremets. So they're desserts usually layered with multiple flavors and textures, and that's the key, multiple flavors and textures. So modern French desserts today, I'm seeing a lot of color and a lot of different designs. So one of the coolest tools out there, I'm sure many of the listeners probably have them, are silicone baking molds. And with that, you can pretty much mold anything into any shape you want. There's pastry chefs in France and in Spain and Italy that actually have their own signature molds.
And so these are like those kind of soft, rubbery molds, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and they're amazing because not only can you bake in them, you can freeze in them so they stand all different textures. So, for example, in my book, Modern French Pastry, there's a creme brulee recipe. But I'm not taking the creme brulee and baking it in a ramekin. I'm taking the creme brulee and baking it in a silicone mold. Then when it's done, I just put the silicone mold into the freezer. I come back the next day, and I can unmold the creme brulee. So I can unmold it and put it on a base, so like a pâte sucrée, and I don't have to, if I'm going to a party, find my ramekins when I'm finished.
Oh, so it just stands on its own.
Yeah, and it can look like anything you want, depending on the mold.
Okay, wait. Pâte sucrée, is that what you just said?
Pâte sucrée, yes. That's like basic like tart dough. That's sweet. The other thing with modern French pastry I'm seeing a lot of is kind of like a unique flavors. Herbs, you're seeing a lot of herbs in the desserts. Yuzu, matcha tea, even like vegetables like tomato. The idea is it's not just chocolate and vanilla anymore.
Yeah. Well, and you referenced the color. I mean, Danielle, you've probably noticed this as well. With sort of the Instagram era of food, everything seems like it's just bright and rainbow colored, and particularly Cheryl's pastries, I would say.
Yeah, I think the more color, the better. I think a lot of people, they buy things because it is Instagram worthy, and the more the color pops on the photo, the better. And I know I've seen a lot of purple desserts lately. You even have one, Cheryl, that we tried recently. And I don't know if that's just because you don't really associate purple with desserts, and so everyone's like, whoa, what the heck is that? But it does seem like the more out there the colors get, the more that people actually want to buy those desserts.
Well, ultraviolet is the Pantone color of the year for 2018. I don't know if you had that in mind, Cheryl, but
I did not.
supposedly it's on all fashion this year and everything, and interior design.
Yeah, like the colors that you see on Instagram, they're all super bold. And when I wrote my book, I said I want every color in the rainbow in that book because, yes, people do. They see first and then they taste.
Well, and you were talking about the types of dough. When I think of, and maybe I'm using the term pastry and patisserie wrong, but when I think of French pastry, I kind of think of all these buttered dough-based sweets or desserts that all kind of look the same. And so the thing about your book that's so kind of shocking is you turn the page and there's just all these colors.
That's the whole idea. It's modern. It's a different work of art. Every page is a work of art. When you go into an art museum, you don't see a bunch of paintings that look the same but drawn by different people or painted by different people. So with the book, the idea was every single recipe is a new shape, a new color, a new flavor. And it's not something that you've seen before. There's no tarte citron. There's no bubble rum. There's no opera in the cake or in the books. But another trend that's happening in France is actually recreating classics. So you may go into a patisserie and you see the opera cake, but it's not flavored with coffee. It's flavored with raspberry and maybe basil. It looks something like an opera, but then it's red on the top instead of chocolate on the top.
So it's really elevating it to an art form, kind of like with high fashion or high design.
It's exactly that.
Yeah. And you studied with, I'm probably going to pronounce his name wrong, but Philippe Urraca?
Yep,
and
exactly.
He's one of the foremost pastry chefs in
So
France?
Philippe Urraca is a MOF, Best Worker of France. That's the highest title you can get for different categories in France, and patisserie is one of them. And then after, that was a long time ago, ça fait longtemps. And then he went on to be the judge of the MOF. So if you've ever seen the Kings of Pastry, it's a documentary, he's in there, and you really see what they go through when they have to take this exam. It's a 3-day exam that they work pretty much years and years and years of their lives to just get the opportunities to compete. And it's really grueling, but at the same time, there's like this brothership, that everybody's rooting for everybody. It's not a competition against each other, it's a competition for each other. And there's even some crying when somebody's piece breaks. But
Sounds like the Master Sommelier exam.
something like that.
Well, so Kyra, in the U.S., I'm just wondering, do pastry chefs kind of keep an eye on what's going on with modern French pastry?
I think absolutely. And to mimic echo what Cheryl was saying, I'm noticing a lot of mirror glazes and bright colors, even kind of a marble effect where they're doing an opaque white with, say, bright red. So it kind of has this super marbly as it drips down off the cake or the frozen mousse, the semifreddo, whatever. So, yeah, I definitely think people are keeping an eye on what's trending globally, what's trending locally, what's trending nationally, and incorporating that into their desserts.
Is there any pushback in France for pushing these boundaries in modern French pastry, or is it embraced nationally?
It's so embraced. I mean, just like, for Epiphany, we have this thing called the galette de roi, the king cake. And everybody hides. It's basically puff pastry with a frangipane type filling inside. But everyone's like, mine's going to be flavored with truffles. Mine's going to be flavored with foie gras. And then it doesn't stop there. Then it's the charm that you hide in it. And every year you'll have a different patisserie, like let's say Pierre Hermé will hire someone to craft his special charm that's going to go in the king cake. And the idea is kind of like with New Orleans king cake, whoever finds charm is the winner. But it's like the Italian clothing designers of Italy. That's what it is in Paris today.
What are some of the textures that people are using? Because you said there's always an element of texture. Mm-hmm. Has that changed?
No, you have to have multiple. So you have something crunchy, you have something creamy, you have something maybe a little rich and something a little light. And then maybe something soft like a sponge cake or a genoise. And then you build that together. So when you take a bite of a dessert, you're going to get all those flavors in one. And so it adds complexity to dessert. It's like a wine. You don't want just a flabby, fruity wine. You want something with a little complexity to it.
And you said, so you don't open the shop you have in Portland, Pix Patisserie, until 4 p.m. So when is the right time to consume these desserts because, you know, I've traveled in places like Italy where the fashion is to eat dessert at 5 and then go to dinner at 8.
I wish people would do this in Portland, Oregon. But yeah, no, people like to eat dessert later unless it's like with tea. But Pig's Patisserie is known also for their champagne list, and so it's like an adult playground. And the funny thing is, it actually used to be a playground because the location used to be a daycare, and there was a playground outside. But now it's more of a playground for adults because we have like, you know, these interesting, unique desserts, and then also interesting, unique wines to go with them. And we're open till midnight. And you can bring your kids at any time. It's just like Europe.
So it's really this adult cultural experience, just going there at 11 p.m. and just sort of taking in the visual of these beautiful desserts that you create, and then the textural, and I'm assuming the aromatics as well. And yeah, it's almost like going to the symphony or something, only for your eyes and taste buds.
Yeah, and the idea also is there's a surprise element, you know, because when you look at the desserts, you see the outside. So in France, when you walk into a patisserie, there's all these desserts. They're crafted like little jewelry boxes, you know, small, intricately decorated desserts individually, like little packages just for you that you don't have to share. And they look so beautiful that they should be going into a museum instead of your mouth. So when you see the outside of this, you're like, oh, it's purple on the outside. But you don't know what's inside. You can read the description, but you really don't like know what's inside until you take a bite. And then you're like, whoa, what was that? Was that pop rock? Or was that tawny port? Or was that a little shot of cognac? Or whatever it is, cinnamon streusel. And then again, you take another bite. Then maybe you get something different. And then you compare it with the wine. But yeah, it's supposed to be, it's like, I'm not just eating a brownie, let's say. Like, you know what a brownie's going to taste like. Mm-hmm. With some of these modern desserts, it's like a whole event.
It's this whole intellectual experience of discovery.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to get back to something we were talking about earlier with the bright rainbow colors that we're seeing in desserts, and focus on one iconic French pastry in particular, the macaron, which has been around for centuries. I actually just read today that it maybe even dates back to the 8th century, but it seems still as fresh and forward as ever. I think thanks in part to its gluten-free composition, but definitely its saturated color. So Danielle, Centoni, I'm wondering if you could weigh in on the weightless macaron. What is the fascination with the macaron?
I honestly think there's so many reasons why this little tiny cookie has such incredible staying power. I remember right after college, I went to Paris and discovered them. And a few years later, that's when they really hit the United States. And there's a huge, this was like in 2000, I think there's like a huge wave of macarons and books. And they're still around. Like people are still buying them. They're still obsessing over them. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that there's so many different flavors that you can have in a macaron. You've got your base cookie, which is just egg white and almonds, ground almonds and sugar. And you can flavor that a bunch of different ways if you wanted with, cocoa powder or, maybe raspberry puree. You can add colors, and then the filling is usually, I think, buttercream or jam, and you can flavor that a bunch of different ways. So I think there's this element to food lovers. They're almost like collectors. We collect with our mouths. And so when you go to a bakery and you see, 10 different macarons, you kind of want one of each, So it's really smart for a bakery to have them. They're going to sell. People can't resist them. They're cheap. It's like $2 maybe for one. It's an indulgence that you always have room for. It's not like a bigger dessert where it's a little bit more of a calorie, buster. It's just a little cookie. And I do think that the fact that they're gluten-free has really helped them have some longevity because more people can eat them.
And Danielle, they're even doing some really fun things with macaron on Instagram. I've seen photos where they're shaping them and piping them into really intricate designs like characters from the Muppets and unicorns and I'm trying to think what else, but, all sorts of different things. So it's not just a cookie.
Yeah. And I've seen people, basically the bloggers, adding things to them like marshmallows and Snickers bar pieces. And you can make them savory. You can kind of like riff on them in a bunch of different ways. And they're always this very eye appealing little treasure. And the fact that you can freeze them and ship them, I think, is why you see them in Trader Joe's. McDonald's in France has them. They're kind of like you can make mass market macarons, and they're not going to be as delicious as, say, Pierre Hermé's, but, it kind of makes it something that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, I was reading an article where someone was comparing the costs of macarons, and at McDonald's on the Champs-Élysées, it's about $5.50 US dollars for a box of 6. Whereas at the La Durée, which I'm sure we'll talk about, flagship store, it's about $19 US for a box of 6. And then Pierre Hermé, which, Cheryl, you were mentioning him earlier. He's kind of a celebrity chef in France. He sells 7 macarons on his website for about $40.50 US.
Wow.
That's not that cheap, Danielle.
Shipping?
No.
Does that include shipping?
No, I don't think it does.
Because they're very hard to ship. I used to ship them, and
They're fragile.
Yeah.
if you don't keep them frozen, they won't make it.
Oh, that's interesting. So, Cheryl, you make macarons every day. What are the most popular flavors and colors that you've found?
Well, hands down, our fleur de sel caramel is the most popular. We sell probably 4 times as many as that we do any other flavor.
And that one's not like a bright color, right? Or is it?
No, it's not. It's brown.
Yeah, that's it.
But it hits
I had
that
that one.
salty, sweet spot,
Yeah.
where there's something a little savory because of that hit of fleur de sel.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, salted caramel is trending, as always. But other flavors, just what Danielle was talking about, the versatility is, that's what the fun thing is. Like for Easter, we were like, what kind of flavor should we make of a macaron? Let's make an Easter macaron. So my girls came up with Peeps. So basically they made a marshmallow, and we made a yellow macaron and put the marshmallow inside and then coated it with the dusting sugar, the yellow dusting sugar. And it's delicious.
Better than a peep.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I saw the other day, I forget where it was, somewhere online, that there's actually someone is selling macaron franchises. So you don't even have to know how to make macarons. You can hire this company and have your own macaron franchise.
And do they ship the product?
I didn't look into that much, but it sounds like, it's like a McDonald's or a 7-Eleven. They'll set you up and then you just roll with it. So.
Wow.
Speaking to the quality, you were talking about the price range, Catherine, of the different macarons. I have not had McDonald's and I have not had Pierre Hermé, but I have had the frozen box from Trader Joe's. I have been to La Durée, and there's a huge difference.
Yes.
And I think some of that is fresh versus frozen, but the ones from Trader Joe's, they're okay. I would probably never buy them again. And I shelled out quite a bit more than $18, $19 because I bought a box of, I think, 24. I mean, it was a price punch, but they were so good. And one of my favorites was rose. It was just really light and floral and fresh. And it was really fun.
And they're usually, if you shop there at like La Durée, they're usually packaged so beautifully. And so the box itself is a souvenir. So the whole thing is like a very gift-worthy purchase.
Yes. And I wanted the box, which is why I upgraded to 24. I was going to get, a box of 12. And I thought, ooh, I like that box. I want those colors.
I admit I have a handful of pastry boxes in my closet that I brought back from Paris.
Just because they're so beautiful?
Yeah.
And you can put jewelry in them and travel, if it's small enough, or just use it to display things.
But I'd like to address you said fresh versus frozen thing.
Yes.
Every macaroon most likely is been frozen.
Really?
Even Pierre Hermé said anyone that does not says they don't freeze their macaroons is a liar. If you think of it on a scale up as La Durée, how many that you're making and how many different flavors, it's like if you came into my patisserie and you looked at all the different desserts that we have on a given day, there's no way that we can make every single thing from scratch every day. The same thing with the macarons. I mean, there's no way. So everybody freezes their macarons, and if you're at home and you're going to eat them, that's a different story. But if you're on a larger scale and you're trying to sell them, and I think everybody should freeze their macarons because the shelf life is really about 1 day, 2 days. And so if you're not going to eat them in 1 day, 2 days, throw them in the freezer. And then when you just want one on a Saturday night, you can just pull out one, let it sit on the counter for an hour and eat it.
I mean, you can even eat them frozen because they're so light. Of course, I'm thinking of the Trader Joe's ones. I say that. Which I will buy again because they're great for kids because kids don't really care.
Yeah.
So we use the French pronunciation now, but I remember as a kid you used to call them macaroons, right? Or is that the New Orleans?
The coconut ones are always called macarons. And so I've always been told French has to be macaron.
Yeah, macaron.
But that's how I differentiate when people are talking about, the coconut one versus the, French almond one. Then I actually read recently, it was tablet magazine had a 100 most Jewish foods. I don't know if you guys saw that. It was really interesting. And there was a little article about the common ancestors. So the coconut macaron and the French macaron have a common Italian ancestor that was like a egg white, sugar, and almond Italian cookie. And Jewish people, this is centuries ago, loved to eat these because they can eat them on Passover. And so those kind of, over the years, morphed into, they went to France, I think, in like the, I don't know if I remember, it was like maybe the 16th century, I can't remember. But anyways, they morphed into the sandwich cookie at that point. But then in the Sephardic Jewish tradition, there's still nut-based, egg white Jewish cookies that they eat at Passover.
Yeah, it seems like in every culture there's a light almond-based dessert, isn't there?
Even in France, there's several different types of macarons. If you go to different regions, they have different types. But, we all know this kind. And I had to bring this envelope in today. It's a junk mail, and it's not even addressed to myself. It's addressed to my boyfriend.
It's from a bank, right?
From a bank, and it's got macarons all over it.
Yeah, it just sort of...
Who could throw that away,
A little bit luxurious, but a little bit fun, and just...
They do. I do feel like macarons do make a statement about like a lifestyle. It's like there's choice, it's fun, it's colorful, it's... if you get one, it's affordable.
Yeah, it's a little spendy, but you only get one or two.
Just don't get 24 when you get a lottery.
Don't get the special gift box. But yeah, and it is sort of like a treat, and so it's not like you said with brownies. Brownies are kind of, we all love brownies, but they're kind of pedestrian. But a macaron is a very special thing, even though it is sort of an everyday thing these days. It still feels like a special thing.
Yeah, I think I sent you guys a link to an article in Eater that was saying that Ladurée, we keep on mentioning Ladurée, but maybe we should say what it is. There's an outlet in New York City, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It's an outlet in Vancouver. There's outlets everywhere now.
So it's like kind of
I heard Texas is...
It's a chain of high-end patisseries, is that right, Cheryl?
I think what they're mostly doing outside of France is the macaron.
And tea. I think they do tea.
And little candies, like sugared almonds.
But yeah, so this article was saying that it's a, quote, lifestyle brand, and I'm not really sure what that means.
It's because their boxes are beautiful,
yeah,
and you can use it for other things.
Well, and getting back to color, I feel like I'm seeing more just kind of pastels, pinks, in people's houses, sort of those robin's egg colors.
And I feel like we're having this whole 80s sort of revival. So it's either neon or pastel with a lot of different things. And I think it's like the nostalgia for the 80s because certainly the current times are troublesome.
Dark.
Yeah.
So we're looking to brighten things up.
Yes.
Pastels.
Well, speaking of nostalgia, maybe we should move to our third course because what I want to know is, are donuts over? Are cronuts over? Kyra Bussanich is a 4-time champion of Cupcake Wars. I have a feeling you don't think that cupcakes are over, but I'm curious I feel like every time I look at Eater or another publication that follows food trends, they're saying that, that donuts are out, but then they continue to stay and be popular. So I'm curious what pastry trends you think are over and what's coming next.
I don't think donuts are necessarily over, Catherine, but I do think that maybe it's not the next big food trend to hit, the next big dessert trend. I do think I think there's going to be a couple different things. I think it's going to be more beautiful, elegant desserts like what Cheryl makes, that modern French pastry, like I said, with the mirror glazes and the different layers and textures. But I also think there's going to be a trend towards more natural, rustic things. We've been seeing this at the bakery for about 4 years now, where people, brides and grooms, are really wanting rustic chic cakes and dessert bars. So I think there's going to be kind of the both. And there's room for both because not everybody likes the same thing and not every event works for the same pastry.
And you brought some donuts, didn't you?
I did. And I brought some cupcakes because you were hating on them earlier.
Well, maybe we should take a look at them.
Okay.
And we can describe them since our listeners can't see them.
So the donuts are plain today. There's just maple and chocolate, but we do some fun donut flavors. So if you like these, come down and visit for a raspberry creme donut or a chocolate churro donut or a dad bod donut. I was talking about that earlier, which is a chocolate donut with a peanut butter ganache stripe and then rolled in potato chips. And it sounds so down home, but it's really good. Like I was saying earlier to Cheryl, the salty sweet.
And
crunch.
dad bod, meaning it will give you a beer belly and you'll look like a...
It won't give you a beer belly unless you're eating trays of these,
For long periods of time.
but it'll kind of nudge you on your way.
And you brought a cupcake? Or
I brought 2 cupcakes. I brought 2 of our Cupcake Wars winning ones. We have our coffee and donuts, and then our raspberry hibiscus rose. And one thing that I think we're going to see a lot more of is incorporation of global ingredients. So the hibiscus, the rose, lots of Mediterranean type ingredients, saffron. They've been using cardamom and some of those those have been accessible for a while now. But I think we're going to see a lot more pastries with things like za'atar in them.
yeah, you have some really, really interesting spices.
I'm obsessing on the
in your
Middle
pastries.
Eastern spices. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Cheryl? What's out and what's going to be in the pastry world?
Well, I'm going to turn to France again. The French have always had macarons, so it's not like a big thing. When you go to Paris now, you see all the Japanese and all the American tourists in line at La Dory. The French people really are into eclairs right now. Eclairs are the next thing, and they have been. So in about 10 years, I think you'll see eclairs all over the United States. But we don't pick that up so fast. But the thing about the eclairs...
I was going to say, how do you do a variation on an eclair?
Okay, so another trend, and I'll go back to the eclair. Another trend is the mono dessert patisserie. So normally in France, you go in and there's like 20 different desserts to choose from. Now, I don't know if it's like a financial thing. They realize I can make more money doing it this way. But there'll be whole boutiques designated just for one dessert. And the eclair is definitely one of them. One thing with the eclair is they put the cracklin on. You guys know what the cracklin is?
Describe it for us.
You have to have the cracklin on your eclair. It's not a good eclair. So cracklin is basically flour and butter, brown sugar, and you mix it up, you roll it out really, really thin, like the thickness of a credit card, and you cut it out. If you're going to make, let's say, a cream puff, you cut out a circle. You pipe your pâte à choux, and then before you bake it, you put this tiny little piece of cracklin on top. And then when you bake it, it melts, and it goes all over the side. And so it adds one more dimension to your eclair. So you have then the soft pâte à choux, the nice creamy crème pâtissier, and then the cracklin, and that's what makes
it's like
it.
the glaze, kind of?
No, and then you put the glaze on the top.
Oh, okay.
And then you got to stop thinking about eclairs as like chocolate pastry cream, pâte à choux, and fondant. That's not what's happening these days. Like the mirror glaze she's talking about, that's on in any flavor imaginable can go inside the eclair. All different colors. If you go to Le Note, they actually have the Mona Lisa on their eclair.
This is in Paris?
Yes.
Whoa.
So you screen print the Mona Lisa on chocolate, then you cut it out and you let it set so it curves, and you put it on the eclair. So that's what's happening right now in Paris.
I feel like they've been saying the eclair is going to be the next big thing in the U.S. for a few years now, but it hasn't quite taken hold. And I don't know if that's because, I don't know, maybe it's because they aren't gluten-free like macarons, or maybe it's because no one's doing them right. I'm not sure why they haven't really taken off the way that they have in France.
Danielle, the other trend that I was hearing about 10 years ago that they said was going to be huge and never really hit was pies.
Oh,
And little
yeah.
like pie popsicles and mini pies.
Yeah.
What do you
What's
think
a
about
pie
that?
popsicle?
Well, when they put the little, it's a hand pie on a stick,
Oh, got it.
basically. But people were saying back when cake bites were huge, they were saying pie pops were going to be the next thing, or mini pies.
Right.
And
yeah. What I'm seeing right now is croissants having crazy weird flavors and fillings.
Yes.
There's a bakery in New York called Supermoon, I think. It's Supermoon Bakery, where it's, I don't know how many different combinations they have, and they're really Instagrammable, which I think is part of the appeal. But I wonder when pastries get that far, if you lose something. Like, I don't know if I want a croissant filled with all these different things and then topped with different things. And I mean, I think they had like a unicorn croissant, or I know
you said the magic word.
yeah. So I don't know if that's the new cronut. I did not
Unicorn
like
stuff.
cronuts though. Like, I had one, and I love donuts and I love croissants, but I did not love cronuts.
Did you have one from the man?
Yes, I did. I
Okay.
did, and it was like kind of heavy.
I've never had
and
one.
sweet and greasy. And
Did you wait in line for that, Danielle?
I did not have to wait in line. Somehow I got it like right at the end. I had like one of the last two.
I'm forgetting the name of that pastry chef.
Dominique Ansel?
Yes.
Yes. Ansel.
Yeah.
Yes. famous for the cronut.
He's done with the cronut too. Now he's got a place in Japan. It's all about ice cream that he puts in pieces of fruit. Just look it up.
Well, and he has the s'mores shooter, so it's the cookie cup with the chocolate
Oh, yeah.
something.
Some of these things sound amazing, and then you eat it, and it's like, oh, it's kind of muddied flavored and heavy. And
What I'm thinking about from a business owner perspective is how time intensive are those and what's the margin on something like that? Because I would love to do fancier things, but as a gluten-free facility, our costs are a whole lot higher just for raw ingredients. And so I take the hit in the margin because people aren't going to pay $12 for a cupcake or whatever to have the same margins as a quote-unquote traditional bakery. So something like that, that's a little bit, I don't want to say fussier, but it just takes more labor involvement. I mean, sure, it sounds amazing.
Can I touch on the gluten-free?
Yeah.
So going back to also modern French pastry, a lot of people don't realize that in my book, there's so little flour used. And about 1/4 of the recipes are gluten-free. Not because I
Really?
made them gluten-free, just because that's what French pastry is. So we always have, people talk about, oh, it's flourless cake. There's a recipe in my book I use a lot, and it's not because it's gluten-free. It's just because it's so beautiful and simple. And all it is eggs and sugar and cocoa powder. And we make a cake out of that. And you take the eggs, you separate the whites with the yolks. You whip the yolks till they're light and fluffy. Then you whip the whites with the sugar to make a meringue, and you fold in the cocoa. And then you bake it. And it's so light and delicious. And another point, there's no leavening. There's only one cake in my book that actually uses some sort of leavening because the French will use the eggs to do that leavening. So I don't think a lot of people realize that. And it's not just the macarons that are gluten-free. A lot of stuff in French patisseries are gluten-free, and it's because of like the layering of you have like 5 recipes that go into one thing. Maybe one of them has a little bit of flour, but usually it's a minuscule amount, and then you have a mousse on top of that, and maybe you have a type of cream or a coulis or something on top of that, and a glaze, and all those things, they don't have any flour, so it's worth looking into.
Interesting. When I think of your desserts, Cheryl, I think of this like intensity of flavor, and I wonder, is part of that because there is very little or no flour?
It has nothing to do with the flour, and that's the thing. It's not like we are trying to make gluten-free desserts. It's just kind of the nature of French patisserie. It's not a lot of flour. We buy a little bit of flour, but we will use way more cream and eggs and milk and butter.
More expensive ingredients.
Yeah, chocolate, nuts, exactly. So yeah, no, it's not cheap.
Well, getting back to the question of price, now I'm curious, since Kyra brought it up, what is the margin on a macaron? Since we've seen that they could be priced anywhere from like 50 cents to $4 per cookie.
Well, my business sense is I price it as high as I think someone will pay for it. We just recently moved them up from $2.75 to $2.85. And no one's complained yet. So
it has a lot of almonds, and almonds are kind of an expensive
almonds are
ingredient.
they went up
expensive.
again. They went up again, yeah.
Oh, that's true.
So
And are they labor intensive? It seems like they would be.
they're pretty labor intensive. It's basically about the technique in folding. There's machines that make macarons. I'm not sure if I've eaten a macaron made by a machine. I maybe have someplace.
You haven't had the McDonald's macaron?
Not yet. Maybe next week when I go to Paris.
I feel like you have to do that now, Cheryl, just because we talked about it.
I will.
You might need to
Report
And
back.
Instagram it.
Yeah,
for
you
us,
might
will
need to
you?
Instagram
Tag
it
us.
tag you.
with a beautiful pastry box.
Do I have to
that comes
taste
in.
it too?
Yes, of course.
It's probably better than the Trader Joe's one.
It probably is.
They're at Cash and Carry too, which is like kind of like a Cisco store you can go to for restaurants. But one thing with making the macarons, I just have to throw this out here because it's like this myth I hear all the time. Is that after you pipe your macarons, you have to let them sit on a tray for like an hour to get a skin. That is just a waste of time. Don't do that.
I'm so glad you said that.
Because we make so many macarons, and we never do that. We don't have time to do that. And ours are some of the best macarons around. Someone actually sent me a postcard from Paris, and it said, I should have brought it. It said, I just went and ate every flavor of macaron at La Durée and Père Hormet, and all I can say is yours are the best. I can't wait till I get home to taste them again. So don't do
true.
that.
Good to know, because that's one of those deal breaker things for me. It's like, I just really don't want to have to wait.
You don't have to do it.
Yeah. I could tap the pan. I could do those little things, but I don't want to have to wait.
All right. Well, any final thoughts about the future of desserts? What will we see in the next year or two, or what's over? I'll just say that I have been reading that soft serve is going to continue. Gourmet soft serve is going to continue to be a thing, and I kind of this sort of base, boring part of me just loves that.
I love soft serve and hard ice cream too. But I agree, because I feel like you can really mess with the flavors on soft serve, and it's pretty easy to do. And I don't know. And there's the nostalgic thing about it with the twisty, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of appeal.
I think Danielle just nailed it. You just said the versatility again. So all these products we've been talking about, the macaron, the eclair, the croissant, like you can. It's very easy to change them up into a different flavor. So again, it's like a mono product. It's one thing, but you can have them taste like so many different things.
And your customers keep coming back because they want to know what's the flavor going to be this
what's
week.
the new one? What's the flavor?
There's a place here in Portland called Basilisk that does fried chicken sandwiches, but they also have Kool-Aid soft serve. And it's soft serve with Kool-Aid powder, and it's so delicious. It is so delicious. So
I'll have to
think
take
of
your word
all
for
the
that.
flavors of Kool-Aid you can
Okay, what about that trend? I don't know if it's still a trend, but kind of like using cereal and processed fruits in your dessert. So, you go through all this trouble to make something like from scratch, and you're making it at home, and then you dump
Lucky
Cocoa
Charms.
Puffs on it.
Or Fruit Loops, yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I think Whole Foods are going to be more of a trend. I think that's going to continue to take, and I don't mean the grocery store. I mean using real natural ingredients, not artificial flavors, not heavily processed things. I think it's going to be a lot more of that, the actual fruit or the actual spice or herb.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you can integrate those things into these mediums we've been talking about, like soft serve or macaron or whatever.
Or pastry crust.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to bring this up or not, but I think I am going to say that as a Portlandian, I'm so tired of seeing Voodoo Donuts boxes everywhere,
Yes.
these pink boxes from this donut chain in Portland that if you go to the airport, everyone's carrying one of these boxes. And I think they do put Fruit Loops and other crap
They
on
had
there.
Pepto-Bismol one for a
come on.
while.
They
And
had
a
to pull
NyQuil
that
one.
because it was medicine,
And the
basically.
NyQuil.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
They had NyQuil? Come on. I mean, this is as far from a natural ingredient.
Okay, Voodoo Donuts, I think, is like La Dorée in Paris. It's all the tourists that are standing in the line. Mm-hmm. And I got a story for you. So,
Okay. Let's
I'm
hear it.
at the airport, and I'm going to Belgium because I won a chocolate competition. And I'm like waiting in Portland. I'm waiting. Flight's delayed. What's the delay? What's the delay? Oh, the flight attendant overslept. Like, oh, really? The flight attendant overslept. So we can't get on the plane even until the flight attendant show up. 45 minutes later, here comes the flight attendant. He's got a box of Voodoo Donuts.
No.
He stopped for donuts. And the worst part was everybody clapped.
No. Oh, my
See, I can't eat any of this, but I have heard that Blue Star just is way, way, way better.
This is another Portland donut
Yes.
chain, yeah.
I think that's very subjective.
Oh.
I've eaten all the donuts.
Okay.
I am a donut
And?
aficionado.
No
And,
donuts for you then.
I am not a huge Blue Star fan.
Really?
I have my reasons, but also it's a very different donut. It's brioche dough based. So it's just like a heavier kind of a
I
donut.
don't know if I call that a donut then.
Yeah, it's not really a donut. I mean, it's fried dough, but it's not what I think of as a donut. No, I have others that I like more.
I like the sound of their flavors.
Yeah.
Like the blueberry basil bourbon.
See, back to the flavors.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
to the flavors.
Because it's collecting. You're like collecting this experience. It's like
Yes.
more than just eating a donut. You're having this other experience because you're eating something that is not the usual. And I think that's just irresistible to people. I think that's why Salt and Straw is so popular. I think,
Which is an ice cream chain.
yeah, ice cream chain here in Portland that's expanding everywhere. I think people can't resist trying the new novel thing. And, we're just adventurous eaters, I guess.
I think what I like about the sound of Blue Star, again, I can't eat it, but my happy place is where there's something approachable and then something exotic. So like the blueberry basil, you wouldn't necessarily think basil in a donut. you might think blueberry. But so that's what really kind of lights me up and makes me super excited.
Yeah.
Again, getting back to that kind of almost intellectual experience where an adult can enjoy dessert because it just kind of gets the brain juices simmering.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I am looking forward to tasting some donuts that you brought, Kyra, and I take back what I said about donuts. So thank you for bringing sweets today. I think it's actually time to move on to our sort of virtual dessert course on this show where we each share something foodie or beveragey that we have been enjoying this week. My dessert is just kind of an observation. I just kind of wanted to throw it out there and see what you all have noticed. And maybe I'm the last person to the party here, but I feel like I'm suddenly seeing corn cakes everywhere from Central and South America. Have you all been seeing? It seems like every food cart and every store is selling them. We have a gourmet grocery store chain here in the Northwest that's based in Oregon called New Seasons Market, and they now have an arepas bar, and arepas are traditional Venezuelan street food that's this savory, gluten-free corn cake. I'm seeing pupusas everywhere, which are the El Salvadoran version, and they're stuffed with different things, and you can buy them in the freezer section at stores like Whole Foods. My kids love them. There's a Costa Rican version called the choreada. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Anyway, have you all been seeing these everywhere? Is this the next thing in savory?
I've been seeing them for a while, Catherine, because again, the gluten-free thing. So I think I started paying attention about 10 years ago when I went gluten-free because it's often a good alternative to a sandwich.
Yeah.
Pupusas or arepas.
So anyway, that's my savory dessert today. I've just been enjoying trying different examples.
I think a lot of people, too, want to get away from, like, refined doughs, you know, like just refined bread, and having, like, corn, like a whole grain kind of, you know, pastry envelope or whatever kind of adds a little extra nutrition. I know I am always looking for, like, where's the most nutritional thing about this? I just don't want to eat just a plain old white bread sandwich.
Yeah. Well, they're pretty good. Kyra, what did you bring for dessert today, other than the actual desserts that you brought?
Yeah. Again, it's about the flavors, going back to everything we've been talking about all day. And I'm obsessing, I know I said this before, with the Mediterranean, Middle Eastern flavors. And I recently went to Tusk, which is a restaurant here in Portland, for the very first time. And I really enjoyed, I think I had a spiritual experience during this meal. And the way the menu's written, it's very vegetable forward, which is nice. And the descriptions are so bland compared to what you actually receive that the server would come back and say, "How is everything?" And I would just hold up my hands and be like, "I can't even talk," which is very rare for me to be speechless. So I'm just really obsessing on all of those flavors. But the experience I had there was really great.
Love that place. Danielle, how about you?
My little dessert is something I discovered recently, and now it's probably gone. It's they're little quiche mandarins. I don't know if you guys have seen these. They're mandarin oranges that are smaller than a golf ball, so they're really, really tiny. You could fit one in a spoon, but they peel just as easily, and there's no seeds, and they taste incredible. But the segments are so small. It's almost like baby toes or like kitten paws. It's like they're just so cute and they're so tender and they're so delicious that I'm obsessed. They're also really expensive. But I think we're going to see a lot more of those because I started like researching them, and I guess this variety has been around for a while and was kind of out of favor because they're too little and no one really thought anyone wanted to buy those. But now there's interest, and so I think next year, keep your eyes open for quiche mandarins.
And Danielle, do you have to peel them? Because with a kumquat, say,
yeah, you do have to
tiny.
peel them, but they peel super easily, like a satsuma
Mm-hmm.
does. They just peel falls right off.
I'll look for those.
They're so good.
I love fruits like
cute.
that with peels because, you know, it's like a little present, and you don't have to worry about it being clean or not. You know, it's just
Yeah,
you
you have
just
to wash
unwrap your
it.
little present and you just throw it in your backpack or whatever. Anyway, yay! I can't wait to try this.
They're so cute.
Going on what you said about this tiny little fruit, I've been thinking a lot about tiny things because every time you have something that you have like a donut and then you make a smaller donut, it's really adorable. You should try it.
And irresistible.
Because we've been doing these tea services and we started making like, this puff pastry vol au vent, and then we made it half the size. And we're like, oh my God, it's so adorable. And then we make a macaron and you make it half the size. Oh my God, it's so adorable. And so everything in miniature, I think is going to be better.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of supersizing everything.
Yes. And then you get to taste more things. So like dim sum kind of thing, or like even tapas idea that you can go and you're not all in. You just have taste a lot of different things instead of just committing to one or two things. And it's adorable as well.
That's a really good point. And, they say that your first one or two bites of something, those are the only bites where all your senses are really taking it all in. And then after that, you kind of stop tasting. So why not just have more tiny bites?
Yeah, taste different things.
As the owner of a Chihuahua, I very much am in favor of this philosophy. Well, thank you to all of you wonderful panelists. Cheryl Wakerhauser, owner of Pix Patisserie and Bar Vivant here in Portland. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Danielle Centoni, author of multiple cookbooks, including The Sugar Cube, 50 deliciously twisted treats from the sweetest little food cart on the planet. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And Kyra Bussanich, owner of Kyra's Bake Shop here in, well, not Portland, actually Lake Oswego. Thank you for being here and for bringing some desserts for us.
Thanks for having me, Catherine.
Today's episode was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the studios of OPB. You can read all about us on the OPB website. Our editor is Alex Ward. Special thanks to OPB sound supervisor Stephen Cray. And our theme music was performed by the incomparable wine importer Kermit Lynch. If you like our James Beard Award-winning show, please help us out. Rate us on iTunes. Subscribe to The Four Top on your favorite podcast app. And please tell your friends about us. You can tweet us at @4top. Check out our Instagram or visit our Facebook page and post your thoughts about the show. We would love to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Nuit blanche, nuit blanche, nuit blanche.
Macaron.